Howdy, it's Jim Arado, and this is very late June 2024. We're in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. We're driving to the Trail of Tears Commemorative Park and Heritage Center, and I'm actually not going to say too much. We had a nice talk with Christina, who runs the Heritage Center. She is great, and she's full of information. I'm going to let her talk, and I'll probably just make this a bit of a slideshow and put in pictures of what she's talking about. This park is just real close to the visitor center. She actually talks about some of the kind of new agey stuff in town at the beginning of our conversation. So I might put a few pictures in from the visitor center or from the Hopkinsville Historic Museum at the beginning. Otherwise, this is all going to be from the Heritage Center. But check this out and let me know what you think. This is pretty complete.
Well, this is our Cherokee room, and you'll see it's different than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We, of course, now you hadn't been here before?
I've not.
Okay.
Nope, it's all new to me.
And, of course, I'm reading his shirt.
Oh.
Did you just have that agreement?
Yes, we just went over to the...
And the festival is August the 17th.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for telling me that. I
Right
appreciate
there at
that.
Tourism. We're setting up over. We're even showing E.T. that night.
It just keeps getting
Do
better.
you know, number one, supposedly the Kelly Little Greenman incident is what inspired the movie E.T.
Yeah, I was telling him that actually as we were driving down.
And number two, I live in Kelly, so I live about a mile from the landing site.
Okay.
We don't do the festival there anymore because we just didn't make enough money to support it, but tourism is kind of taking it over.
Where's the
for us.
tourism center?
Okay, when you pull out of here, you'll take a left by the playground there, and that little lane will just lead you
almost
right up to
like
tourism.
a walk from here, basically.
Well, you can walk it if you want to. I'm too lazy.
Yeah, it's too hot today.
That's also our powwow grounds.
Okay.
Because we do have powwow
Yes.
in September too,
Okay.
weekend after Labor Day. And that's all inclusive, so we have all different tribes at our powwow. So that's good to come down that
Yes.
weekend too. But since you kind of like that kind of stuff,
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that.
the Kelly Green, and you need to stop over there at tourism because they've got a big setup showing the Kelly Green Men,
Yes.
and we got little fans that look like alien faces and stuff. It's so cool.
Oh, there you go.
But also back in 2017, when we were the point of largest eclipse,
Yes.
do you realize that also happened on the anniversary of the Kelly Green Men landing?
Ooh.
And so I had 643 people here on my property. And it was like divided into thirds. A third of those people were here waiting to see if the Green Men came back. Then there was about a third of us that were here for the Cherokee stuff, because of course I told the Cherokee eclipse story, and we played Indian music, and we let the kids make all the noise they possibly could, because that's the Cherokee belief. You got to scare the giant frog from the sky who's trying to swallow the sun because he thinks it's a ball.
Oh.
And that's what we used to tell our children so they wouldn't be frightened. And then I had about a third that were like the NASA people who had the special telescopes and cameras and all the cool stuff. And it was so wonderful. My son-in-law's so smart. He thought at the last minute, I better throw the breakers because all the lights are going to kick on when it gets dark. You know, the parking lot lights and stuff. So he threw all the breakers just in time. And I will tell you, every cricket went quiet. It was nothing but absolute silence and the most beautiful purplish sky you've ever seen. It was great.
During this last eclipse.
Oh, I know. And you couldn't see it without the glasses, because if you looked straight up at the sun, it stayed just as bright. You put on the glasses and you could see it.
Well, it was...
But we didn't have that big of a group. It was probably a dozen people. That it was actually one of the only federally documented UFO landings in the United States.
No.
Because the real Men in Black came, and Fort Campbell, which is just down the road here, actually closed off. I mean, they had soldiers surrounding the town of Kelly to keep people out till the Men in Black got done with their investigation.
I know this.
You know, it was, and so that happened in 1955. So you think, no street lights, they didn't have a TV, they didn't have a home phone, they didn't have, and so they were scared out of their minds. And then you got the people who think there might have been a little moonshine involved, but the Sutton family swears there was no alcohol involved. But again, I mean, they were here from Washington like that. And they have, actually the show Mysteries at the Museum has an episode about it. And I do believe Ghost Hunters did an episode about it.
I know I've seen some stuff on TV, but I've read Geraldine's book, the first book.
Right.
But she's a nice lady. I've met her a
Right.
couple times.
Here's the draft before they made it.
Oh,
And that's the
that's
actual piece of art that they used on it, the Guthrie painting up here.
Right.
The owl is the bringer
There.
of bad news.
Oh, okay.
Now see, to a lot of people, because we do actually have a certain group of medicine men that use the owl because it stands for wisdom, whatever. But in general Cherokee belief, you know, a hoot owl howls outside your window 3 times, that means something really bad's fixing to happen. And as you can see, here's the owl flying over the people on the trail,
Yeah.
trying to warn them,
Yeah.
this is bad, this is bad.
Yeah.
And actually the literal translation, when you write out Trail of Tears in Cherokee, it actually translates to the very bad trail of the Cherokee.
Okay.
So, yeah. So take it as you will, but owls are kind of creepy, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But I will also tell you, let me give you a little cocktail and stuff. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Been talking all morning. Not only are we home, and see, a lot of people believe Hopkinsville's on a vortex. We actually even have a saying here, it's like, keep Hopkinsville weird.
Yeah.
So we have the Kelly Green Men. We're also home to Edgar Casey.
Bell Witch is not too
Who's
far away.
right, the Bell. See, he already knows what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
The Bell Witch is an hour down the road, not
Yes.
even an hour, and
Yeah.
I'm crazy about the Bell
I
Witch.
am
But of
too.
course, we grew up with that story here.
Uh-huh.
And it was always, you know, oh, if you say I hate the Bell Witch 3 times in a mirror in the dark, she's going to scratch your eyes out, stuff like that. You know, things girls do at slumber parties.
Yes.
And so the Bell Witch is, and I love to take my grandkids down to the Bell Witch Cave and just scare the
That's fun.
snot out of them.
I love that
at
little family
Halloween
that
time.
runs it too. They're just
Yeah. And so we have the Bell Witch. We are also, believe it or not, did you ever hear about our blackbird invasion here?
No.
Back in the 70s, and I was a young girl, because I remember we couldn't go out and play because the town was taken over by starlings,
Oh.
blackbirds.
Yeah.
You could literally sit here, look out that window, and that whole parking lot would be black, and you would not be able to walk outside. It was so deafening.
Oh.
And they just appeared out of nowhere. Nobody knows where they came from. Lasted several weeks, if not longer. Like I said, I was a kid, so I really don't remember the time frame. And then one day they were gone.
Oh.
But they literally came through. They thought it was because we had so many Bradford pear trees, and they thought that's what was drawing them, that they literally cut Bradford pear trees all over this town.
Was it migration
To get rid of
season? Or
No,
was it just,
no.
just random.
They were just here, and then, like I said, and then they were gone.
Mhm.
But they also had histoplasmosis. So we had several people who died from histo.
Oh.
Several pets died from histo, because, you know, dogs go out so to go potty, and they got their nose to the
Yes,
ground, and they're
yes.
sucking up bird poop. My sister, actually, to this day, when she takes like a TB skin test, she will always show up positive because she had histo, and she
Yeah.
has bad scarring in her lungs and stuff. To this day, all these years later, she still suffers from the effects of having histoplasmosis. So they were here and they were gone,
Yeah.
just like
Oh.
Alfred Hitchcock.
No, I did not.
And of course, people think Hopkinsville's on a vortex because, of course, you know, Mammoth Cave and all that.
Yeah.
Kentucky's a cave system. So they think between the limestone and all this stuff that weird stuff happens. So I do recommend not only stop at the tourism center, but if you have time, go downtown and go to the Penny Royal Museum downtown.
We went there that's where we
came
stayed
from
from. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Well,
Yeah.
they didn't tell you about the blackbirds?
No.
That's why they have blackbirds all over the wall and stuff.
Okay.
You should have asked, why
Well,
are there blackbirds? Because
Well,
it's talking about the
they were
blackbird.
great, but I started talking to him about Casey and the Kelly
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And then
yeah.
we were off to
You
the
got off
races.
on that.
Yeah.
And see, and then of course we were also home to the tobacco wars.
Yes, we talked about
And
that.
the creepy night riders who wore the black, I mean, they were like before KKK, but they sure looked a lot like them, except they wore black hoods
Close enough.
and said
Maybe
everything
that was a
on fire.
metaphor for the starlings.
Oh,
Maybe. Look, good job.
There's a story waiting to happen. Yeah.
And we had ghost hunters out here one night. We had a ball. I mean, we were here till 4 o'clock in the morning. We didn't get anything, and I even told them, because they even had me talk in the little machine to try to get, like, my mom, who was the tour guide out here for 20 years before she passed, they tried to get me to get her to talk, or Mr. Moreland, or all these people that I actually knew in real life who are gone now. No, nothing came through. And then I remember one of them asked me, because they went up to the cemetery, and they said, well, do you think the chief will talk to us? Well, number one, he didn't speak English. Number two, no, because I'm going to tell you what, when I die, I'm not going to go where I was miserable. I'm going to go where I was happy. And I said, he's down in Georgia picking apples, like, on his little orchard and, hanging out by the river where he was happy. Because I'll be damned when I'm gone. When I'm gone, I'm going to be like in a big library somewhere.
Yes.
Or go visit every museum in the world.
Yes.
Whatever I can do. Anyway, we'll get back here to the site. Especially since you haven't been here. This is our Cherokee room. Everything in here is typical to the Cherokee. And what happened here, this was actually a ration stop on the Trail of Tears removal. And I don't know, you do know a bit about the Trail of Tears,
Little bit,
yes?
yeah.
Okay. So, of course, the forced removal of the Cherokee people from their homes in the southeast.
Yeah.
Andrew Jackson wanted them out of Georgia.
Yeah.
Now, bear in mind, if you could tell by looking around the room, and y'all pardon me for being politically incorrect, okay?
You're in the right company, it's fine.
But we were the whitest Indians there were. We had lived amongst the whites for so long that most of us were bilingual. Our children were multilingual because we sent our children away to school to learn other languages because we liked to trade. We were farmers and we'd take our corn or whatever to market. Everybody else was at market, and they were speaking different languages. So we wanted our children to know these other languages so when they went to market, they wouldn't get taken advantage of. And believe it or not, one of the common languages for our children to speak was Greek.
How'd that happen?
I have no idea why it was Greek, but actually the first book that was, when Sequoia here came up with the written language for the Cherokee, the first book that was translated was the New Testament of the Bible because 90% of the Cherokee people were Christian. And it was translated from Greek to Cherokee by a 15-year-old Cherokee boy at Brainerd Mission School in Tennessee. And we actually have a page from the 1860s Cherokee Bible right there.
That's authentic?
That is
That's
authentic.
legit?
There is the authenticity certificate right behind it. Yes, sir.
They're the only tribe that had their own written alphabet, correct?
Right.
I think the Cherokee
But
were.
it's not an alphabet. It's called a syllabary. And you know why?
No.
No.
So I guess each symbol represents not
It
a
represents a
letter per
whole
se.
syllable.
Right. Okay.
So it's a syllabary.
Okay.
So basically, it's phonics. It's based on
Yeah,
sound, not
okay.
sight.
I gotcha.
Sequoia, who was a dairy farmer and a silversmith, so he was a little bit of an artist, had a fascination with languages and with messengers taking pieces of paper and being able to communicate across the miles. So he would actually scavenge around and find scraps of paper, newspapers, anything he could find. And when he saw a letter he liked, he would copy it and add a squiggle or a slant. So you'll even see our letters. Some of them look Greek, some of them look Latin, some of them are English, just with a little weird whirligig or something on it.
Sure.
And he assigned it a sound.
Yeah.
Now, Cherokees do call books talking leaves.
Okay.
And that's because Sequoia got great big catalpa leaves, which are like as big as your head, bark from a tree that had been struck by lightning because it's like charcoal, and that's what he would write on. So that's why they call them talking leaves, because the original syllabary was a stack of leaves.
Yeah.
But also, sad story, his wife accused him of witchcraft.
Oh.
She thought he was casting spells and conjuring spirits because he was making strange symbols and strange noises.
Oh.
And he had to go before council and prove that he was trying to educate the Cherokee people he was not conjuring. she divorced him anyway and burned all his work.
Oh.
And so he had to move away and start all over again. So it took him about 11 years to complete.
Where does the wife go in history? Do we know?
Nope.
Just one of those people that disappears off
She
the
just
pages.
left after she burned all his stuff.
Huh.
But within 7 years, I think it was, we had our own newspaper. The Cherokee Phoenix was first published in 1828, and it's still in publication today. You can go online and get a copy of the Cherokee Phoenix in English or Cherokee.
Huh.
That's pretty quick when you think
You
about
know,
it.
yes, absolutely. And there's a copy of it hanging up there. It was written in Cherokee and English, and every Cherokee home got one. The man who was the first editor was a man who they called Elias Boudoir. Now, he was a full-blood Cherokee, but he went away up north somewhere to learn how to make a newspaper. And the man who taught him, who took him in as an indentured servant, was a man named Elias Boudoir. So when he came back, he took his name. His Indian name was Buckwady.
Oh, okay.
But he went by Elias Boudoir. In future years, when the Trail of Tears started happening, Elias Boudoir was one of what we call the Treaty Party. He and a man named Major Ridge and a man named John Ridge went to the government, said they spoke for the Cherokee people, and if they paid them, they would make sure all the Cherokee people left. And they took the money and they ran.
Oh.
Now, the Trail of Tears, the last group arrived the end of March 1839. June of 1839, all three of those men were killed on the very same day in three totally different places, three totally different ways, and they never found out who did it.
Huh.
So basically, they were put to death for treason.
Sure. You got
One
their
was
just
shot,
desserts.
one was stabbed, and one was hatcheted to death.
Huh.
Oh,
Yep.
that's
And it was Elias Boudoir who was hatcheted to death.
Well, it's called justice.
So, blood law was our law.
Yeah. Well,
So there you go. There's a little bit about the Cherokee
Yes.
folks. Of course, you also see music was a real big deal for us. Always had music. This is also a chief's headdress. Our chiefs did not wear the long headdresses, ever. Chief's headdress is basically a turkey butt feather. And they only wore them for ceremonies.
okay.
Because Cherokees, being chief was your civic duty. Like I said, Sequoia was a village chief, but he was also a dairy farmer and a silversmith. White Path, the chief who's buried here, actually had an apple orchard and was a farmer. And he was also a politician. So, civic duty, when it came time to make announcements or whatever, he'd put on the headdress and go make announcements. Otherwise, he was on the farm, or he actually would go from his home in Turniptown, Georgia. I love that name.
Turnip Town?
Turniptown, Georgia, but it's now called LJ.
Okay.
And supposedly the apple capital. You would think Georgia, you would think pecans, peaches. No, apples. And corn. He had corn too. He also owned 2 cabins. But he would travel from his home in Turniptown to Washington, D.C., fighting the removal. Now, bear in mind, by the 1830s, number one, we had adopted Christianity more or less over all the Cherokee Nation. We were also college-educated people, but we were also a mixed race of people. Because if we loved you, we'd marry you. I always say we were like the earliest hippies,
Yeah.
and we had different social laws than the Caucasians. So, like, we did own slaves. The ones down in Georgia and Alabama had slaves. We had plantations. We had slaves. But we could marry a slave, and there was nothing wrong with that. But once a slave married a Cherokee, they were then considered Cherokee, and they were no longer a slave. So we had black Cherokees, we had Scottish Cherokees, we had Irish Cherokees, Chickasaw Cherokee mix. It didn't matter what tribe, what color, anything. We lived, we married. Plus, we were a communal society, and pre-Christianity, we were matriarchal. So women owned all the property. Men did not own property. The women did. All a man owned was his shoes and his knife, and to get a divorce, all a woman had to do was sit him outside the cabin door, and he had to go away and never come back. So, like I said, that's why Sequoia's wife got away with funding all this stuff, because she technically owned it. So, there were social changes going on, cultural changes going on in the Cherokee Nation at the time, but White Path was leader of the traditions. So he did not accept Christianity, he did not want to change our laws, and he certainly didn't want to move. So, he would go back and forth fighting the removal, and he returned from one of his trips, and there was a pioneer family living in his cabin. And he had no recourse because the state of Georgia had declared itself sovereign and passed laws against Indians having any rights. So he had to surrender himself to the stockades that Andrew Jackson built. And he signed the paper there. There's the copy of it saying that he would be a co-conductor of his group because he felt like if he was on his horse in front of his people, they would follow. And of course, he made it here before he passed away. And then we kind of go around here to the tobacco issue. And tobacco was a real big deal. And if you look there in the frame, you'll see where Cherokee tobacco actually grows very much smaller than Kentucky tobacco. And we do have some Kentucky tobacco there at the end of the ramp and over here by the strawberry patch too. Kind of showing, and it's just now growing. It's not even a month old, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Kentucky tobacco is huge because it's been treated and it's been, manufactured that way to grow that big. Cherokee tobacco looks like a weed when it's growing, and that's about the biggest leaf you're going to see off of one. And we do have a story about the hummingbird saving the last tobacco plant for the Cherokee people, and that's why there's a hummingbird there. There's two different styles of pipe. Of course, the one is a fancy elbow pipe there, and the other is the traditional, the long, skinny soapstone is a traditional pipe. Even though it's called a 7-clam pipe, it's a pipe holder. And this is when councilmen would go. We'd always have 7 head councilmen in each village. And as they spoke, they would smoke. And when they were done speaking and they've said their bit and they've said, this is what I want, they would put their pipe in the holder. Whoever had an argument or whoever agreed, when they agreed, they would put their pipe in. When all 7 pipes were in the holder,
that's kind of nice.
There you go.
I like that.
And then they would tell the chief, and the chief would go out and announce to the people, this is the new law. This is what council says.
Yeah.
So chief really doesn't make any decisions. The peace chief doesn't. He just kind of makes the announcement and keeps people informed. Then I also have over here, you'll see our fella, this is Fred, my mannequin. Our men in general, day to day, wore turbans. And they wore turbans because they used them for pockets. They would put their tobacco, their coins, their pipe, whatever, in the folds of the turban because their shirts didn't have pockets.
Okay.
Also, yes, baby.
I had a question. So years ago, my nanny brought me over here to, I think she called it a powwow.
Yeah, we have powwow every year in September.
September. Okay. What's the dates this year? Do you know off the top of your head?
Weekend after Labor Day, I think it's the 7th and 8th
Okay.
this year.
I was gonna bring them back up with you.
Oh, they'll love
The soapstone. I know,
it. Also, Fred right now is playing stickball.
oh yeah.
Which, of course, we call it stickball now.
Yeah.
Back then, the Cherokees called it Little Brother to War.
Oh, okay.
Because if 2 villages were having a dispute, they played a game to settle it.
Yeah.
Whoever won the ball game won the dispute, nothing else was said.
Yeah.
Period.
Okay.
That's it. So, so that's because Cherokees did not believe in killing other Cherokees.
Okay.
So we had to play a ball game.
Yeah.
It'd be great if the world did that now.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
Also here by Fred is a little statue. And it looks like it's 3 kind of bears or wolves, but actually that's first man. His name is Kanati, so they'd be like Adam. And he wears a wolf cloak, and he has a wolf on either side because man was so ignorant when God made him that he put him with the wolves to teach him how to survive. And that's why our wolf clan are always our teachers and protectors.
Oh, okay.
Now, then we go right here. Here's the women's part. We got a grinding stone and some dolls that are dressed as Cherokees dress, because as you can see, we dress just like the pioneers, because once we learned we could trade for that cotton material, yeah, that's way better than skins. Women's dresses are called tear dresses because the first dresses, scissors are made out of steel, and steel was the most expensive metal, so a lot of Cherokees did not own scissors at the time.
Yeah.
So they would trade for the bolt of material and hold it up to however tall they were and tear it off the bolt. Or they would tear up old blankets and things to make their dresses. Now this is considered a modern tear dress. It was about 1960-ish because it's machine made. And if you see the diamond shapes on the bottom of it, the diamond shape stands for the campfires of home. Oh. So you will always see on women's clothing, Cherokee-wise, there will be a diamond shape somewhere to represent home. Of course, you know, we got corn. I do have a little thing here about Wilma Main Killer, who was our most prominent female principal chief back in the 1980s. She actually, they did put her on a quarter.
Oh.
And they did make a Barbie doll for her, which I'm in search of at this point, because all the scalpers bought them up. Now they want $500 and $600 for them instead of $35. Also up here you'll see, well, number one, the quilt, which I'm very proud of because it's still in such great shape, being from the early 1800s.
Yeah.
And it's called a wig rose pattern, and it's WHIG. It shows political affiliation.
Yeah.
Then we have the moccasins, and these are Cherokee moccasins. And believe it or not, they found a pair that was almost 2,000 years old. So they know they've been wearing those same types of shoes for 2,000 years. And they're made from one continuous piece of material, one piece of leather. And when they pull the strings in the front, that's what makes the toes pucker and tightens it. And of course, when you put it on your foot, you step in water and let them dry on your feet. So then they're molded to your foot. So they're always yours. Now, Cherokees wear flaps on the side of their moccasins. Not fringe. No fringe. That's Western. The Cherokee wore flaps because we lived in the woods. You wore the flaps up in the summertime to protect your ankles from snake bite, because it was very common to step on the snakes out of the woods. So you're protecting your ankles from the snake bite. Of course, we wore a lot of earrings. Everybody pierced their ears. Men would go crazy with it and actually put shells and things in their ears and stretch their earlobes to make them scarier looking. And let's see who else we got. We actually, this looks like a butter churn, but it's a corn pounder. When they got tired of using the stone, they started making these out of hollowed logs, and it made it easier to powder up the corn. And we always carried our babies not in papooses. They weren't put on boards and tied down. You would literally take your apron or something and tie it up almost like they do now, like the baby carriers now. We also did beads, and these are the first beads that she's holding, and they're clay. So basically you go out and dig up the dirt, roll up the clay, and then you run it through the embers of the fire, and that's what makes them gray and hardens the clay. So we always had jewelry. We like jewelry. We have this collection over here, which is the Moreland collection, and that is Mr. Moreland in that picture, and then some of his ancestors in the picture above. You can see from the picture above that they were a very wealthy farming family, because these women were wearing like poofy sleeves and petticoats and stuff. Your average Cherokee housewife did not. That was, you wore a plain sack dress with your apron and went on about your work. So they were very wealthy people. Supposedly they were removed on the trail and then turned right around and came right back and settled in Tennessee where they wanted to be. Right here is the tump from their wagon. And if you see the date on it, it was from 1808. But that's the wagon they took on the Trail of Tears. Then again, we have another Bible here, and we found the page where it says, translated from the original Greek. But it is in English, not Cherokee. I also have that wonderful Navy Colt and bone-handled knife that were used at the Battle of Fort Donelson in the Civil War.
Really?
Because they settled in Indian Mound, Tennessee,
Yeah.
which is right outside of Fort Donelson. And when Fort Donelson was being overtaken, the soldiers were coming over asking the farmers, come help us, and that's what the Moreland family took to help at the Battle of Fort Donelson.
So if you were a Cherokee that's being removed, how did you get to come back? Who was it?
There was nothing holding you in Oklahoma. If you had the money and means, you went wherever you wanted to. A lot of them went up into Colorado because they went to the Rocky Mountains because they knew the mountains.
Yeah.
Several of them went down to Texas because Texas was sovereign, so they could go down there and be free. And a lot of them turned right back around and came right back east. They just stayed out of Georgia to stay out of Andrew Jackson's way.
So if they had the money or the means or the political clout or whatever it was, they could come back.
And again, the Cherokee people were very wealthy people. There was one group that had 4,000 horses with them.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But again, they were also, they were religious people. So every group had a minister or a missionary with them. One group had 24 missionaries with them because the missionaries told Andrew Jackson, you're making them move, we're going too.
Yeah.
Because they'd lived amongst them for so long. I mean, one of the first flute songs you learn is Amazing Grace.
Oh,
You know, it's just there. But anyway, I also had the rocks that are sitting out here are the most amazing things to me because a little old man brought them to me in a shoebox.
Yeah.
And he said, me and my brother found these about 50 years ago, and my grandkids aren't interested. I want them to go someplace that'll take care of them. And I, of course, don't know much about things like that. So I was like, oh, I know these are great rocks, and I can tell these are good arrowheads, whatever. And I called over here at Murray State University, and I call him the rock doc. I don't know exactly what the degree is that studies these things. But I call him the rock doc. So Dr. Ortman came over here. I said, I got some rocks I want you to look at. And I opened up the shoebox, and the man broke into a sweat. He was shaking, and he said, please get these out of this box, put them behind glass, because some of them are over 2,000 years old. So predating even tribal names.
Right.
And I just kind of looked at him and I said, oh my God, you know. Of course, these long rifles actually come from the Moreland collection too, so they are from the 1800s.
Okay.
And then this little poster down here will show you, we actually have, do you need me to move something?
No, you're fine,
Okay.
you're fine. I'm just taking lots of pictures.
We have 10 certified sites in Kentucky now, and we're working on number 11.
Okay.
So it never stops.
Where's
Number 11 is a place called White's Inn, and it's up north. And it was a small stop, almost like the Stagecoach Inn, where they were allowed to get water and things like that. But we've found the paperwork, finding the proof. So you can stretch those out if you need to.
Oh, no, I'm good, thank you.
Because they're down both sides.
I know just about last month we were, not him, but our family was down in Chattanooga, so they've got that, you know.
That's John Ross, yep.
Okay, and then there's also a site, it's, I think it's a state park now, or a state historic site, I guess crossing the Tennessee River. Do you know anything about this?
Oh yeah, because that's the water route.
Yeah.
John Ross took his group completely by boat.
Okay.
He bought the steamboat Victoria.
Okay.
And took his group completely by boat. They never walked.
Okay.
And see, he and his brother pretty much owned Chattanooga, Tennessee. They ran a shipping company out of there. That's where Ross Landing came from.
Oh, okay.
And do you know the name Chattanooga means pigeonhole? Because if you stand back and look at the mountain, it looks like there's little holes all throughout the mountain.
Sure.
And that's what the name Chattanooga means.
Okay.
Pigeonhole.
Well.
But yeah, I mean, and John Ross was our principal chief for 44 years, and he was only 1/8 Cherokee. But everybody felt like he could see and communicate with both sides. And so they kept voting him in because our chiefs were voted in. You weren't born into it.
Okay. I see. Okay.
We were very, democratic society. You know, my cabin is almost 200 years old too.
This one?
This one right here. These are the original fireplace stones with it. 3 types of hand-hewn logs.
So
We
this is,
found it about 20 miles out in the county, and some smart people came from UK and from national parks and authenticated it. The farmer sold it to us for $500,
yeah,
and we moved it in one piece on a semi.
how about that?
Did not even take it apart. Volunteers came, re-chinked it, re-roofed it, put air conditioning in the sleep. There's a sleeping loft all the way across the top. So that's where all the ductwork and stuff is.
Yeah,
And we did have to fill in the dog trot. It was open between the two, but of course for security we had to fill that in. And we made a museum.
That's
Great.
what year was that? That it was-
1991 we opened to the public.
So the guy that sold it was doing it just to be nice. The 500.
Pretty
bucks
much,
probably
yeah,
was-
just for us to get it off his
Oh,
property.
that's nice.
Well, that's kind of like when you go down to the Bell Witch place. It's
Yes,
a copy of the
yes,
cabin.
yes.
This is a real
This is
cabin,
real
and the
deal.
earliest owner we found, believe it or not. Now, bear in mind, this is a 2-room cabin with a large sleeping loft. Yet the earliest owner we found was a black man named Sam Dillard.
Oh,
So we really believe he was a freedman.
oh, yeah.
And the deed says Sam Dillard and his woman Minerva. Not his wife, his woman
Okay.
Minerva, who does not have a last name. And they do have stories written about Miss Minerva out in the yard with the big cast iron, cauldron type pot making crawfish stew for the whole neighborhood.
Oh,
Because it was right on the river down through Julian.
oh, that's cool.
yeah.
So, yeah. All right, come on, watch
And
your
this was
head.
a
Yeah, Mark,
storage
what you-
supply depot for the Trail of Tears, correct?
Right, it was
Okay.
a ration stop.
A ration stop,
And
okay.
so the road that's right out front, which is Pembroke Road, 9th Street, Old
Uh-huh.
41, whatever name it's got today, that was the original road into Hopkinsville. It was a stagecoach route, and that's the road they actually walked on. So
Okay.
that's why you see those brown signs that say
Oh,
National Historic Trail. This was a huge farm. It was the Latham family farm. So ration stop could have been a couple of hours up to 2 days. But they
Okay.
had ration stops about every 15 miles.
Okay.
And of course, there were grist mills all over the place because the Little River out here has branches all over this town. So we had a grist mill, a church,
Yeah.
a tavern,
Yes.
a grist mill, a church.
The
This represents the 7 Cherokee clans.
Okay.
So you had the long hair clan, which were kind of the mystics. They studied the stars, they did the traditional, potions and chants and whatever. Bird clan were actually the scouts because they would climb high up in the trees and look around, or they'd go up to the top of hills or whatever. Then, of course, here's the wolf clan. Like I said, they were the teachers and protectors. The deer clan were the messengers because they were the fastest runners. They just practiced running all the time. So they were the messengers to go village to village. Then the Patea clan were the farmers. Of
Okay.
course. Then we had the Paint clan. The Paint clan were the medicine men. They were the doctors. Because to us, medicine men are doctors.
Okay.
We don't have a shaman. There's no such thing. We don't have, that's not our culture. But the reason they were called the Paint clan is because whatever medicines they mix up, they wanted to paint it on your body and let you absorb it that way. Then we have the Blue clan. And the Blue clan were very special because they were our pediatricians.
Oh,
They were medicine
Oh.
men only for the children. And they were the Blue clan because they would mix fruits with the medicines to make them smell better or taste better for the children.
yeah.
So it was always blue. It was blueberries or grapes or whatever they could find that was sweet to mix into it. But when a child was sick, a member of the Blue clan stayed with them until they were either well or died. But they
Okay.
never left a child's side. That's why to us it's so unrealistic when people say great-great-grandmother was given to a white family on the Trail of Tears. Because the Cherokees would never have given away their child to a white family. They
Yeah.
would have handed them off to a younger Cherokee family if they
Right.
thought they were dying.
Okay.
So we know that's not true. Okay. Now, intertribal room. And that's because powwows intertribal. So it's everybody from everywhere, and they all bring us stuff to talk about their stuff too. So you got the plains, the northwest, the southwest, Canada, Mexico. Everybody's been here at some time or another. And now this will show you, this is the actual 4 major routes. that were on the trail.
Yep.
So see, you have the water route, which is what we were talking about, Tennessee River and stuff. They came up through Paducah, by the way. You are here right now.
Okay.
So see, they all started down here. Georgia-Tennessee state line is where Andrew Jackson built all the stockades. We're on the Georgia-Tennessee state line, one in Fort Payne, Alabama.
Yep.
And that's when they started throwing people in the stockades. And we know about 1,500 people died in the stockades before they ever even left. Because they died from dysentery. Because basically they were open air cattle pens. And everybody was just there out in the open. You know, they were feeding them rotten meat. They were, you know, just being mean in general. So, my pride and joy, because my father was a World War II veteran.
Oh.
So I kind of got that kind of history going through my head too. He was actually modeled after the last living code talker.
Oh, stop.
And if you
That's
look
too
real
cool.
close, you'll see the scar under his
Yeah.
eye even. And the last living code talker recorded his voice. So,
Oh.
he actually so he says it in Navajo
Yeah.
and then in English.
Oh, that's too cool.
Isn't that too
Wow,
cool? And of
yes.
course he said, you know, you could tell it's never been okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I was so tickled when my daughter found this.
Well, I'm glad you got that.
Because my mother actually bought them when they came out brand new. She went to Target, got a bunch of them, and then she undressed them and made them into kachinas.
Oh.
So it was like, you can't do that. And she did. And I do also have, of course, our girl. And this is when Mattel finally decided that not every little girl was blonde hair and blue-eyed.
Yeah.
And there are actually 5 in the Native American series now, but she was number 1 in the Native American.
Are you trying to hunt down the others too?
No, not particularly. Because the only thing different in them is they put a different dress on them and put them out. I want Wilma Mankiller.
Killer, yes.
I'm actually thinking about getting Bessie Coleman too. Bessie Coleman was actually an aviator, and she was half Cherokee, half black. And she actually died in a plane crash, but she wasn't driving, she was riding with someone else, and someone left a wrench in the motor casing of the airplane, and they crashed. And it killed her. She was only like her early 30s or something when she died. But I'm thinking about getting her too. But see, she hadn't gone up like that because people don't know her like they do. Plus, the other thing about the Wilma Mankiller Barbie is the first ones that came out, the very, very first ones, which you'll never find, they misprinted in Cherokee. And instead of Cherokee, it says the Chicken Chief.
Oh.
And so you'll never find one of those. And when, of course, the Cherokee called up Mattel and were like, what the are you doing?
Yes.
They changed everything. But, yes, so there's 2 different ones.
What a cool story though.
But anyway, back to my code talker here. When they declassified the code, they put that was with him too, and this is really cool.
That came with the G.I. Joe?
It did.
What a cool toy that they made.
And the reason they could never decipher that code, and it's the only code that's never been deciphered, is because it was a double code. Not only were they speaking in Navajo, but they named all the equipment after animals. So like tanks were turtles, boats were fish, planes were birds. So if they had have broken the code, it would have been like, why are these guys talking about these turtles going over the hill to meet with hummingbirds? What the hell are they talking about?
Yeah.
That's what they were talking about.
Huh.
And that's why it was never deciphered. And believe it or not, the movie Wind Talkers, the Nicolas Cage movie, is actually, and I have been told, that it is very, 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 very true to the real story.
Oh.
That they did not take a lot of license with it. They really did write it as it was. So,
Well.
it's got Navajo approval.
Well, that has value.
You know, that's
Well, it does.
it gives it cred. You know.
Because so many Hollywood, like I said, we live in such a John Wayne all Indians look alike, all
Yes.
Indians live alike. And you could see the Cherokee were very, very white. The Wild West was still the Wild West. So yeah, they were riding horses half naked, chasing buffaloes off the cliffs. We waited for the buffalo to migrate through. It had hunting season, totally different world.
Yeah.
Because of course, who settled out west? The Spaniards.
Yeah.
And what were the Spaniards? Oh, they'd come through and cut your throat just 'cause, So that's what they were learning. We had all these religious zealots around us.
Yeah.
And that's what we were learning.
Yeah.
Let me show you something else, toy man.
Yes.
This is the coolest thing, besides my rocks, that was ever donated to me.
Oh, holy cow! No, I know exactly what this is.
I had no idea when the lady gave them to me. I had to do a lot of looking
Is there a
up.
flat spot?
Well, just sit it down in the
Oh,
chair
my-
there.
Okay.
What does it say?
Some old.
1933 Indian
Oh.
Gun Company cards.
Oh.
And the stuff they wrote on the back of there,
Oh.
people would be shot today for some of this.
Oh wow. No, these are attractive. I mean, the use of the colors, if nothing else.
Oh, yeah.
It's just little pieces of art. At one time, I thought these might be fun to try to collect, but price-wise, it's.
Oh yeah. And this lady just brought them to
Oh.
me. Her daddy collected them, and none of her family was interested in them when he died. Would I like them? I said, oh sure. I had no idea what she was handing me, Because also in the back of the book too, when you get past the cards, are from the 1950s cutouts from cereal boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Where boys would cut them out and hang them up on their wall.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know what the badges are, but they're from something. So say those came off of cereal
I did.
boxes.
Oh. Interesting. Any cereal company, which cereal company did that?
I have no idea, but it would
Okay.
have to be Post. I'm almost positive because
Okay.
they're the ones that in the 70s put the little 45 records on the
Yeah.
cereal boxes. And
Oh,
we used to
okay.
collect. So
All right.
always Post cereal of some kind, alphabets or whatever. Had those, and then the very back there's a few what would be considered kind of inappropriate postcards now. But were common postcards, because I think some were even in my mother's collection at one time,
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
How every chief looks the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all lived in teepees, and it's like a Cherokee never saw a teepee till we were made to go out west.
Yeah, sure.
Because why would we have to move our house? We ran a farm. Tell
Yeah,
people where you were.
Yes, I'll put up a little, probably a little
Send
video
them
actually.
to me.
Yes.
And if you come back for powwow weekend, I am here on powwow weekend, and I have the air conditioner.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
I bet it's crowded in here, isn't it?
It does get crowded, yes.
How
it
big of a
does.
crowd do you get for that?
Well, we've had up to 5,000 people, and we've had as little as 500 people.
Yeah.
And it depends on the weather. It depends on how many out-of-towners we could get, because locals don't tend to come anymore. Because they feel like it's the same thing all the time, and it's like, no, it's not, because we never know who's
It's
coming.
just home, they don't know any, yeah.
And so we've been pushing really hard to try to get more out-of-town people and get the word out further that, hey, this is going on. So if you do look at powwows.com on the internet, we are finally listed on powwows.com, and that'll also show you where other powwows are going on all over the United States. So,
Okay. Well, cool. Well, we sure appreciate it. This has been great.
well, take your time to go up to the cemetery now before you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You know.
Up here.
And yeah, and the two flags right out front are the two Cherokee flags, the Eastern Band, which is North Carolina, the ones that never left, and then the Cherokee Nation, which is the orange one with the black star in the corner for the 4,000 that died, and that's Oklahoma. Then our flag court is a flag from every state. I always challenge school kids to do this because they don't teach state flags in school anymore.
All right.
But that's a state flag from every state that was involved in the removal and the American flag. So 9
Oh.
states in the American flag. And then when you're there at the flag court, you'll actually see the bridge going over Little River. And then the other side of the bridge is actually part of the original campground here.
Oh,
And then remember, when you're up in the cemetery, the above-ground burial boxes are John and Nancy Latham, the original farm owners.
Oh, okay.
And then if you look in front of the chief's graves, there's about this much left of their original flagstone
Okay.
tombstones left. So we put the national park stones exactly where their headstones were.
okay.
Yeah, and there we go. I wanted to play Christina's audio over her description of some of the stuff we see out in the park. Small park. After you visit the museum, you can spend 10, 20 minutes and cover what's outside, which is very interesting in its own right. By the way, I love that museum. It's a small museum in a small cabin. I did try to film, but it's a bit cramped up, so I thought the slideshow way was kind of the way to go there. She also provided some really interesting information on local folklore, the Kelly goblins or the Hopkinsville goblins. The Blackbird story was really interesting, and I was glad she shared that with us. And of course, she had a lot of good information about the Cherokees and the Trail of Tears. And as I've mentioned, I was there several years before, and she was there and gave us a similar presentation. That museum is very lucky to have somebody like her to help interpret. Anyway, if you've been to this Trail of Tears park and museum, let me know what you think. I really think this is kind of under the radar in general, and people need to stop by and visit when they're in the area.